There was nothing teenage about us except our actions. Three grown men acting like teenagers. It was a bad situation, and we tried our best not to let it consume us. It's easy to become bitter and vindictive when your wife cheats on you. You have to control yourself so you don't explode. As long as the three of us stayed together, we were able to support each other. So which of our wives cheated? All of them. It all happened over the course of 6 months. My wife Loretta sprang into action, and I had no trouble getting Dora and Colleen to join her. By the time the three of us realized what was happening, it was too late to save the marriage. In fact, none of us wanted to try. Tonight, everything would come to a head. Amazingly, none of the wives suspect that we know what the hell is going on. We've spent the last month preparing for this event, and we actually can't wait to pull it off. Woody, Terry, and I grew up together. We were born and raised in Wummelsdorf and originally expected to retire here. Unfortunately, that all changed when the wives took a stroll. Tomorrow we were supposed to leave for Canada, and tonight we'll have one last juvenile affair. Why juvenile? Well, what we had planned was childish and inappropriate. We preferred it to violence and revenge. The idea to go to Canada was Terry's. Every summer, the three of us would go fishing there. We always had a great time and often talked about how great it would be to live there permanently. Of course, we were all married and had children. 2 of my daughters married and moved away. Terry had a son who was in the Air Force. Woody had 2 sons in college, and 17-year-old daughter Caitlin was still living at home. Caitlin would be a problem until Woody found out that she was aware of what her mother was up to. She threatened to leave if he didn't do something about it. Eventually, 3 guys and 1 determined teenage girl are sent to Canada. Things were difficult for a while, but we all agreed we could make it work. Terry was the chef. More accurately, he was a chef. He had no formal training, just a lot of experience. He and Dora had owned a small family restaurant for the past 10 years. Or rather, they owned the restaurant until Terry sold it last week without Dora's knowledge. I don't know how he pulled it all off, but he walked away with $100,000 in cash. When he added that money to what he'd withdrawn from the bank and cashed in on insurance policies, we had a pretty good starting capital. Woody owned a machine shop with his brother Glenn. Glenn had been trying to buy Woody out for a few years, so this was another easy $100,000 in the piggy bank for the move. He got almost half that amount for his 1964 Vet. Today he cleaned out all his bank accounts. I was the only one in the whole company who went to college. I didn't have a business like the other guys, but I had over $250,000 in investments. I made good money working as an electrical engineer, and I invested wisely. Even in a bad market, I was able to stay afloat. Liquidating the property had taken a couple weeks, but now everything was ready to go. In total, we had about $1 million. We had originally wanted to buy a fishing lodge, but then we relented and settled on having guests be able to get to it by car. It ended up costing us almost $500,000, but we were happy. We had enough money left over to start a job and support ourselves for at least 4 years. If we made money, things would be even better. We had all our things packed and ready to go. Tomorrow morning, the caravan of 3 cars was leaving for a new life in the North Woods. It sounded about as exciting as Little House on the Prairie. Loretta worked in the claims department of one of the big insurance companies in the area. Somehow or other, she had gotten close to her boss, Raymond Upright. To go out with Raymond in the evenings, she talked Dora and Colleen into filling in for her. The girls would go out together for dinner and drinks or some house party so that Loretta would have a chance to meet Raymond at his house. It went on like that for a few months, and then Raymond set up a date with Colleen. The girls didn't want to leave Dora out, and after a couple weeks, she too had a steady escort. So now, every Wednesday night, the girls would have a date night, and the guys would play poker. The 3 ladies and their companions spent their time having wild, passionate sex in Raymond's suburban home. We never found out if an exchange took place there, but it didn't seem important. Woody had chosen the Holiday Inn as a staging point. We waited at the house until the wives left for their night out. For some reason, they each drove their own car, probably in case one of them wanted to leave early or stay late. Caitlin wasn't happy about having to wait for us at the motel, but we couldn't risk having her with us. We weren't planning anything particularly difficult, but we could still get into trouble. Woody and Terry were going straight back to the Holiday Inn, so they were driving together. I, on the other hand, wanted to see Loretta one last time before I left, so I drove my car. There were 6 cars parked in front of the upright house. It looked like everyone was driving themselves. About a half hour after we arrived, the light came on in one of the bedrooms and then went out again. Soon the same thing happened in the other 2 bedrooms. We each had a set of side-cutting pliers. It took less than 2 minutes to cut all the valve stems on each of the cars. I had marked up the house the week before, so I knew where the electrical panel was located. The individual breakers were inside and the main panel was outside, right above the meter. While I went up to the house, Terry and Woody had the smoke flares ready. Terry made 10 smoke bombs out of PVC pipes. I don't know what was in them except saltpeter and sugar. Terry tested them and they burned for 20 to 30 minutes. They were big suckers. Woody went to the back of the house and Terry went to the front. When I saw the first trickle of white smoke, I threw the main switch. Using the mini-mag, I opened the drawer and pulled the main breaker. By the time I got to the machine, all 10 smoke bombs were already running at full power. Most of them were white, but a few were orange and red. As we drove away, the house was completely shrouded in smoke. On the way home, I used my track phone to call 2 local TV stations. It was at least an hour later when I heard a car door slam in front of the house. Loretta looked like shit when she walked into the house. I sat in front of the turned-off TV with a beer. It wasn't cold because I'd had the same one in my hand for the last 30 minutes. "How was your evening, darling?" She put down her purse and took off her shoes. "I had to take a cab home. The car stalled." "Why didn't you call me?" There was no reply. "Do you want me to go get the car?" "No, I'll take care of it in the morning. I'm tired. I need a shower and I want to go to bed." "Loretta, where are your earrings? You were wearing diamond solitaires when you left the house." She brought her hand up to her ear, and her mouth opened slightly. I expected her to say they were in her purse, but she said nothing. "Let me guess. You took them off so you wouldn't lose them in bed. You left your purse in the living room, so you had to put the rings on the night table. When the lights went out, you forgot your earrings in your hurry to get out of the house. Is that all?" She threw me a perplexed look. "How did you know the lights were out?" I picked up the master switch I'd pulled out of the box. "Oh, God, no! Were you in there? Please, John, don't tell me you were there." I smiled and got up from my chair. I wasn't alone. Terry and Woody were with me. "We'll be leaving in the morning. We bought a shrimp fishing boat in Bayou La Batre, Alabama. I hope you and Raymond will be very happy." "John, wait. Don't go away. John, can we talk? John!" I slammed the door behind me and walked to my car. On the way to the motel, I drove past the Upwaits' house. There were several black and white cars parked there and 4 tow trucks trying to get cars out of there. I parked on a nearby street and walked straight into the garage. No one tried to stop me. The house was dark and empty. Using the mini-mag, I checked the bedrooms. In the second one, I found a pair of diamond earrings and both of Loretta's wedding rings. I found it interesting that she had actually removed the rings before committing adultery. 10 minutes later, I was at the Holiday Inn. Loretta had called the other wives, and they were desperately trying to patch things up. According to Terry, Dora was crying so hysterically that he couldn't understand a word she was saying. He disconnected the phone. Colleen, on the other hand, was less emotional. She merely demanded that Woody come home immediately and explain himself. He disconnected the phone, too. We had one room with 2 double beds booked. Caitlin wasn't thrilled about sleeping in a room with 3 guys, but it was added at the last minute, so she had to put up with it. We slept overnight in our clothes and hit the road at 5 in the morning. We had reservations for the next night in Plattsburgh. Woody promised Caitlin that she would have her own room. We had been on the road for about 5 hours when my cell phone rang. I'd forgotten to turn it off. Caller ID showed it was my oldest daughter, Sarah. "Dad, it's Sarah. What's going on between you and Mom?" "Is she there?" "Yes, and she's in a complete state of distress. She said you won't let her explain anything." "Did she explain it to you?" "No. She just said you're being unreasonable and unfair. That's all I can get out of her." "Sarah, do me a favor. See if your mother wears wedding rings." A brief pause followed. "No, what does that mean?" "Ask her where her wedding rings are." I heard a few muffled sounds, and then Sarah returned. Dad, what the hell is going on? I asked about her rings and she burst into tears and ran out of the house. She drove off, but I didn't recognize the car she was driving. When your mom is ready to tell you what happened, I'll discuss it with you. Until then, I have nothing more to say. I'll check in with her later today. I disconnected the phone. I didn't need to grieve anymore. The divorce papers would be served to each of the wives at noon today. Raymond Upright will receive the attachment papers, as will Carl Wilcox and Dennis Roswell. Our mutual attorney, Seymour Schlamp, has promised to keep us informed as long as he is able to contact us. Seymour went to the same high school as us and is proud to be a part of our revenge. It's not really revenge, just a way to get away from the problem. 2 days later, we settled into our new home. Hopefully our wives were expecting us to go to Alabama. It would be easier if no one came looking for us. Terry was excited about the kitchen, his new empire. The lodge was closed for 2 weeks so we could get settled in. A few of the old employees lived with us during that time. Woody had his hands full. He had very little free time to keep an eye on the boat motors and generators at the lodge. Kathleen agreed to wait tables and do the cleaning, but since she wasn't a co-owner, she wanted to be paid. How could we say no? By the time the first guest arrived, we had everything ready. Terry made the menu and filled the pantry. Woody adjusted all the boat motors. The overall running of the place fell on my shoulders. I gladly accepted the challenge. Experienced fishing guides from the locals were eagerly waiting for guests. How much they earned depended on how successful their trip would be. We didn't have to worry about that. When I had the opportunity, I worked on building a website for the lodge. The better the website, the easier it would be to fill the rooms. Terry, Woody, and I were fishermen. When fall came, we would have to start providing services to people interested in hunting or something else. At this point, we had no idea what we were going to do. We decided to cross that bridge when we got to it. Things were going great at the lodge. But things at home weren't. Seymour called to give us the news. Dora was the only one of the wives to sign and return the divorce papers. She didn't want a divorce, but felt obligated to do everything Terry asked her to do. However, she became a recluse. She spent most of her time in the house and did not want to socialize with anyone. Colleen disappeared along with Dennis Roswell. Seymour couldn't even serve them. No one knew where she was. Seymour saved the worst news for last. Loretta refused to sign the divorce papers, so Raymond Olette moved into her house. Our house. So much for the repentant wife. For the next few days, I was useless at the cabin. Finally, Woody and Terry sat me down at the table and insisted that I come home and straighten things out. I didn't wait until morning. Waking up in the middle of the night, I headed south. It wasn't fair to the boys if I didn't do my part. I had to make things right. Of course, halfway through, I broke down. I'm not a marathoner. I rented a small room and called Seymour. I told him to sue Continental Paragon Insurance Company for $1 million with a caveat. If they fire both Loretta and Raymond, I'll drop the suit. Seymour grumbled a little because he knew what option they would take and he'd seen big money fly out the window. I told him to bill me for the hours and hand me the papers tomorrow at noon. I got up early and hit the road. By 8 o'clock, I was sitting in front of the house, hidden from view. 10 minutes later, the garage door opened, and Loretta and Raymond drove off to work together. It seemed natural, and that pissed me off. It was time for more teenage antics. I stopped at Kroger's and bought a half-dozen cans of red beets and a pack of rubber gloves. By then, my favorite Eastern market was open. My first purchase was 5 pounds of what is commonly referred to as stinky tofu. In the frozen food section, I bought 5 bags of frozen skinny fish. I don't know what they are actually called. We bought them for bait because they smelled so bad. We just called them skinny fish. The last thing I bought was a couple durian fruits. Durian fruit is considered the worst-smelling food in the world. I was sure I could figure out how to use it. 30 minutes later, I was back at my old house. By my calculations, I had about 3 hours to do everything I needed to do. The first thing I needed to do was to use the skinny fish before it started to thaw. All I needed was an ordinary screwdriver. I went from room to room and removed the cover of every electrical switch and outlet. Behind each light fixture, I lowered 2 skinny fish into the wall. Each room took me about 10 minutes. After an hour and a half, I ran out of fish. The sticky tofu was soft and mushy. It spread out like butter. I used it on the top and bottom of the mattresses and all the furniture cushions. The odor penetrated the fabric and would not come out. I had to use a kitchen cleaver to cut the durian fruit into pieces. Wow, it smelled rotten. I stuck a piece in each of the heating and air conditioning ducts in the house. I went around to inspect my work. I carefully replaced all the appliances so they couldn't figure out where the odor was coming from. Satisfied with my efforts, I dripped red beet juice on every carpet in every room. No stain remover could get it out. I finished up in the house. Before I left, I went to the garage and opened the breaker panel. I removed each breaker and then the main breaker. I pulled the panel out and used my trusty screwdriver to unscrew each connection. It was an electrician's nightmare, especially since I took the panel and breakers with me. My work here was done. Now they could take the house. In 30 minutes, all hell would break loose at the Continental Paragon. It was time to leave. For some reason, I felt I had to stop and see Dora. She let me into the house and offered me coffee. I felt obligated to accept. She asked how Terry was doing, but didn't offer anything else. We sat in silence until I finished my coffee. I asked if there was anything I could do to help her, and she left the room crying. As I was walking toward the door, she called out to me. "John, tell him for me. Please tell him for me." "Tell him what?" She came back, crying again. I had a hard time understanding her. "I didn't sleep with him, John. Tell Terry I didn't sleep with Carl. I did some other things, but I didn't sleep with him." "What do you mean by other things?" "Well, you know, he kept hitting on me. I had to do something to make him stop. I didn't even want to be there. Colleen and Loretta made me go. They thought that if I did too, I wouldn't say anything. I felt trapped. I just stood there. I didn't know what to say." "Please, John, tell Terry I didn't sleep with him. I love Terry, and I'm sorry I let Colleen and Loretta talk me into going with them. I don't know what to do. Help me, John." I nodded at her and walked away. She was truly remorseful for what she had done, but she didn't know how to make things right. Before heading back to the cabin, I looked in on Sarah. She wasn't talking to her mother anymore. Loretta had never told her what had happened, but she had somehow found out. When Sarah met with Loretta, there was an argument that was never resolved. More damned grief. I was just outside of Plattsburgh when my cell phone rang. It was Loretta. Sarah must have given her my number. "John, you son of a bitch, what the hell did you do?" "Can you be a little more specific?" "I got fired today. They said they had to either fire me or sue me. Your name was mentioned." "That's terrible, honey. I was hoping they'd just pay me $1 million. I guess we both lost." It was hard not to laugh. "That's not all. When I got home, I found the house trashed. There was no electricity and it stank to high heaven." "What have you done to my house?" "It's not your house, Loretta. You refused to sign the divorce papers. This is our house. It's as much mine as it is yours, and I can do whatever I want with it." "I've called the police. You're going to have to pay for the repairs and press charges." "Why don't you just have Raymond fix it? He seems to have a better handle on things than I do." "He'll be glad to talk to you about it, John, especially since you got him fired, too. Tell you what, Loretta, next time I'm in town, I'll give him a call." The conversation was getting a little redundant. I was glad to hear that everything went well, but I really didn't feel like talking to her anymore. I didn't bother saying goodbye. I just disconnected my phone. I hoped to be back at the lodge in time for breakfast. Things were going smoothly while I was gone, except for one small problem. "Caitlin, where the hell is your dad?" "Hi, John. Welcome back. Dad's only going to be gone for a couple days. He had a little problem he had to take care of in Vegas." "Yeah, he had to borrow some working money for the trip. He asked me to tell you not to worry." "How much working money?" 10 grand. What the hell did he need $10,000 for? I don't know exactly, but I think it had something to do with Mom. Oh, shit. Where's Terry? In the kitchen, getting ready for dinner. Other than one of the partners absconding with a big chunk of our operating capital, everything seemed to be okay. Terry was busy, but seemed to have things under control. He realized that it was easier to have a small buffet every day than to let guests order off the menu. That suited him fine, and the regulars didn't complain. "John, welcome back. How was your trip?" "It was a lot of fun, actually. I was glad I went." I assume you know that Woody is gone? Caitlin briefly told me what happened, but she doesn't seem to know much. Colleen's in trouble. She called Seymour and asked if he could get in touch with Woody. Apparently, Dennis dumped her with a decent bill at the MGM Grand. The hotel had arrested her for defrauding the hotel owner. The bill was just under 10 grand. She is being held at the local jail until the bill is paid. She's facing jail time if nothing is done soon. You're not saying Woody is going to use our money to pay the hotel bill for Colleen and her boyfriend? I don't think so. He was smiling as he left. He might have something up his sleeve. I hope so. We may need that money for the winter. He bought a round-trip ticket and should be back tonight. I was about to leave when I suddenly remembered my visit to Dora. Terry, I saw Dora when I was home. She's not doing well. That's not pleasant. After what they did to us, I have no sympathy for her or the others. I'm not sure, but I think things might have been different with Dora. Different? How? A cheater is a cheater. There's no fixing that. Loretta and Colleen could have pressured her to join them. I don't think she wanted to, but she felt she was being forced. Is that what she told you? Not exactly, but she wanted me to be sure to tell you that she didn't sleep with that guy. Then what the hell was she doing there? I didn't answer him. There was a brief pause in the conversation before he started putting two and two together. Oh, shit. Don't tell me. She didn't have sex with him. That's great. Just great. She said she felt like she had to do something. She insisted I tell you she didn't sleep with him. Apparently, Loretta and Colleen really nailed it. I could tell Terry was upset. She shouldn't have been there in the first place. I left him alone to ponder. I think I understood what was going on in his head, but I have to admit I didn't know how I would have acted under the same circumstances. It only took me a few hours to finish all of the day's business. I had to figure out how to make money for the winter months. We had already finished the fishing season, but we needed a little more. We didn't want to compete with hunting camps and unanimously rejected anything snowmobile-related. My research was interrupted by a new guest. Amanda Freese was an amazing woman. God, what a trite phrase. I chastised myself for even thinking about it. She was in her early 40s, had short dark hair and a perpetual tan. She wasn't a beauty, but her posture and demeanor made up for it. You're the new owner, I assume. One of them. What can I do for you? I'm quite capable of taking care of myself. My name is Amanda Freese. I've been coming here regularly for the past few years and hope to continue to do so. I hope you haven't changed too much because I hate change. If there's anything you don't like, just let me know. I will, I assure you. I felt like she was trying to bait me a little, but I didn't understand the purpose of her doing so. I had a responsibility to keep her happy, but I wasn't about to let her shit on me. Luc Boudreau was my constant guide. I assume he's still available. Absolutely. I'm going to spend the rest of today settling in. Can you make sure Luc is here in the morning? No problem, Mrs. Freese. Luc Boudreau was more than happy to tell me about Amanda Freese. For some reason, she took a liking to him. He was no better or worse than the other guides, but he refused to take censure from her. He said she seemed to enjoy it. The only thing she was interested in was catching pike. This was strange, for she came from Burlington. There were plenty of pike in Lake Champlain. She had no reason to come to us. Luc wasn't sure, but he figured she was divorced. She had a son who only went on one trip with her. He hated spending time at the lake, so she never took him along. She tipped great and seemed to be Luc's favorite guest. Pike fishing was an unusual choice for a woman. It wasn't too exciting. Catching pike was like snagging a log. She had never held one. She strictly adhered to the catch-and-release principle. But there was something mesmerizing about her. I looked forward to having her stay with us. Sometime in the middle of the night, Woody came back. When I came down the stairs, he was already halfway through breakfast and seemed happy to see me. Tell me the bad news, Woody. How much did your trip to Vegas cost us? Woody chuckled softly as Caitlin poured my coffee. Not a dime, buddy, not one damn dime. You seem to be in good spirits. I wasn't expecting that. I paid for my own ticket, John. Round-trip excursion tickets to Las Vegas are pretty cheap. I brought a wad of cash with me to brag about it to Colleen. It worked out perfectly. What worked? Woody finished his meal and pushed his plate aside. They kept Colleen until she paid the hotel bill she and the jerk had racked up. He dumped her, but she didn't have the sense to realize what was going on. When she pays the $9,700 plus court costs, she'll be released. I showed her the money and promised to take care of everything once she signed the divorce papers. I've never seen her act so quickly. I thought you said it wouldn't cost us anything. John, I'm not that stupid. I took the signed papers and walked right out of the courthouse. I'm sure it took a few hours for her to realize that I had screwed her over just like I had screwed Dennis over. I mailed the signed papers to Seymour and got on the next plane to Montreal. You're a rotten son of a bitch, Woody. Yeah, I know, and I feel fine. When Caitlin came over to finish her coffee, I asked her to bring me breakfast. She said it would take a little while because Terry was gone. What the hell was going on? Caitlin knew the kitchen better than I did, so I helped her by waiting tables so she could concentrate on cooking. Luckily, the breakfast crowd was spread out over several hours. I cleaned up the kitchen while Caitlin did the chores. The lunch buffet went a little more smoothly. It was easier to be a busboy than a waiter. Caitlin again did a great job preparing the food. There was no doubt that we needed more help. After lunch, Luc Boudreau was waiting for me in my office. This was not a good sign because I didn't want to lose him as a guide. Mr. Mercer, I need a minute of your time. Is something wrong, Luke? If so, I'll do my best to fix it. Everything's fine, but I'm concerned about Miss Amanda. Concerned about what? She asks a lot of questions. She never does that. She gets annoyed with me because I can't answer most of them. I don't want her to be mad at me. What kind of questions? Mostly about you and why you bought the cabin. She's asked where you're from and about your wife. I can't answer any of those questions. She's never done this before? Hell no. She's never talked to me before at all, except about the pike. Anything else? She asked a lot of questions about a young girl, the one doing the farming. Caitlin? Why would she ask about her? Luke only shrugged. He felt awkward about the whole situation, so I thanked him and he quickly left. He looked relieved and satisfied with the conversation. Woody took care of dinner. He set up some grills on the porch and all the guests cooked their own steaks. The weather was cool, but everyone seemed to enjoy it, even Amanda Freese. The beans, coleslaw, and garlic croutons were an easy accompaniment. Woody and Caitlin were cleaning up, and I noticed Amanda Freese sitting by the fireplace with a glass of red wine. It wasn't cold enough yet for a good fire, but the small fireplace looked nice. May I join you? She didn't answer anything but moved over on the couch to make room. That was a good sign. I had no idea what I was going to say next. Is Luke here to see you? She was anticipating my visit. Did you ask him to? Not exactly, but I gave him a little nudge, so to speak. You baited him? In a way, it became obvious that Luke didn't know any more about you and your staff than I did. It would have been awkward for me to approach you directly, so I hoped he could interest you enough to get you to come to me. Are you a very conniving woman? Is there a purpose to your madness? She finished her wine and laughed lightly. I held out my hand for an empty glass, which she readily handed to me. A few minutes later, I returned with the bottle and 2 glasses. Now that you no longer feel awkward, do you have any questions you'd like answered? A few. I'll offer you a deal. I'll ask you a question for everyone you ask me. That's not fair. I have a right to privacy and you don't. Wouldn't you rather just sit here and enjoy the wine and fire? No, I want answers. You're very argumentative. Yes. Are you married? Not fair. You jumped in with a question when I wasn't looking. I don't know if it was wine or a joke, but we both got comfortable. Yes, or rather, I was. I'm currently in the process of getting a divorce. She nodded when I replied and took a sip of wine. My turn. Are you divorced? You asked that question backwards. Yes, I know I am. I'm an optimist. I've been divorced for 9 years and I have an 18-year-old son. I have 2 daughters. They're married and gone. I didn't ask. I assumed. It was a strange conversation that went on for over an hour. I was forced to open another bottle of wine before we were done. Amanda eventually excused herself because Luke was expecting her at 6 a.m., and she proudly stated that she was never late. I looked forward to spending more time with her. The next morning brought a few unexpected surprises. Woody and I went down to breakfast together and were surprised to find that our new waitress was none other than Dora. Woody and I smiled at each other as we greeted her. Neither of us made any smart remarks and tried our best to act like nothing unusual was going on. At one point, I caught Dora's gaze and she quietly said, "Thank you." I just nodded. Later that morning, Seymour called. Loretta had agreed to sign the divorce papers with one caveat. She wanted to be released from all obligations associated with the house and for me to become sole owner. The house was trashed, but there were still some good bones in it. I advised him to proceed. I was 600 miles away from the house, but I was confident I could work something out. It was nice to see the positive results of a silly, childish prank. What really struck me was that she hadn't tried any of the assets she had accumulated. She only knew about half of them, but it was odd that she willingly walked away without demanding anything. Terry looked into the office and winked at me, but nothing more. He was a better man than I was, and I felt good for him. Amanda Freese took her mind off fishing in the afternoon. She was in the main area of the lodge with Caitlin. I glanced over to them a few times, trying to see what was going on. At times, Caitlin seemed a little flustered with the older woman, indicating that they were not talking about something, but she wouldn't leave. For the rest of the day, I had a hard time concentrating. I wanted to talk to Terry to find out what had happened to make him see Dora again. I hoped to have a little chat with Luke to see if the mysterious Mrs. Freese had blabbed during the morning fishing trip. What was going on between Amanda and Caitlin? I was dying to call Loretta to give her some space and quietly gloat. I was sure Dora wanted to talk to me, but in a way that wasn't obvious. Damn it, I'm turning into the world's biggest busybody. Suddenly I found myself laughing at the silliness of the whole thing. Woody stopped by with a couple bottles of cold beer and broke the spell. Terry was not happy that we had used up all the steaks and ruined his menu for the rest of the week. The beer turned out to be very tasty. Woody and I decided that we would not ask Terry about what was going on with Dora. When he was ready, he would tell us himself. Shortly after Woody left, Luke came by to let me know that Mrs. Freese was in a great mood that morning. She hadn't caught many fish, but didn't seem upset about it. As he left, he smiled and winked at me. I wasn't sure what that meant. Amanda Freese always sat alone during meals. I tried to avoid casual contact with guests, but today I decided to impose myself on the mysterious woman. Actually, she wasn't so mysterious anymore, just interesting. "May I join you?" "Sure. I haven't placed my order yet." "You weren't out this afternoon?" "No. I wanted to talk to Caitlin. I should have asked her father's permission first, but I was hoping it would be casual." "And how did that turn out?" "Not too well, I'm afraid. I wasn't able to explain things the way I should have. I hope I didn't make too much of a blunder." Dora interrupted the conversation to take our dinner order. We chose one of 3 entrees and the rest of the meal was seasoned. Terry knew how to keep things simple. "What exactly were you trying to do?" "Last night I told you I had a son. You mentioned it, but didn't elaborate. Jason is very smart, handsome, and physically fit, but he has one problem. His father has mentally abused him since he was an infant. Although he always excelled at whatever he took on, his father was never satisfied. The constant bullying and belittling robbed him of his self-esteem and confidence. He stutters and avoids socializing with others, whether adults or his peers." "I assume that's what caused the divorce?" "Absolutely. I also have a restraining order prohibiting his father from having contact with him even after he's of age. I have good lawyers." The conversation paused for a moment as Dora served us our food. "Luke said Jason came to the cabin with you once?" "Yes. I was hoping it would help him relax, but he hated the lake and fishing. Since then, he stays with my sister when I visit." "Are you uncomfortable leaving him alone?" "Yes, but I think it's necessary. I don't want him to depend on me. At some point, he's going to have to become independent. I try to stay away a little longer each time to reassure him. Unfortunately, leaving him with his sister doesn't help much." "I think I see where this is going, but why Caitlin?" "She's the same age as Jason. She seems poised and confident. She works hard. Other than that, I don't know much about her. She's attractive, and people seem to feel comfortable around her. What exactly did you expect her to do for you? Or should I say Jason? All I wanted from her was to spend some one-on-one time with him. I was hoping I could bring him here for a few weeks and maybe he'd open up a little. In 6 weeks, he's supposed to start school at Princeton. In his present condition, he won't be able to go. I've spent thousands of dollars on professional therapists and all for nothing. I guess it's too much to expect in 2 weeks. I have to try something. I've noticed Caitlin's not being very responsive. She promised to think about it, but I'm afraid things aren't looking too promising. Would you like to talk to Woody? I was hoping you could do that for me. Why me? I'm a good judge of character. Unfortunately, I let my father choose my husband for me. I will never make that mistake again. I'll see what I can do. Will you eat dessert? I will if you join me. I found Caitlin and Woody on the porch. It was chilly but beautiful. Can I take a break? Sure. Caitlin and I were waiting for you to come out. How do you like your dinner? Interesting. Your beautiful daughter was the topic of our dinner conversation. That's what we were hoping. Uncle John, she's made me mad. I can't figure out if she wants me to be a babysitter or a prostitute. I wasn't really her uncle, but she'd gotten used to calling me that years ago, and it seemed to have caught on. There's a big difference between those two options. Well, I'm not crazy about either option. Did she present it to you that way, or did you come to that conclusion on your own? Caitlin waited a moment before answering. No, I just assumed that's what she meant. Either way, I have no intention of spending time with a retard. Whoa, baby. Bad choice of words. Woody seemed a little annoyed by his daughter's insensitivity. Well, I don't know how else to describe him. Mrs. Freeze was trying to explain what was wrong with him, and I wasn't paying attention. My thoughts were jumping around in circles. Caitlin, he starts school at Princeton in a couple months. He's not stupid or retarded. In fact, from what I understand, he's pretty damn smart. Woody and I watched his daughter strut back and forth on the porch. No, it's still wrong. She's offering me money to take care of her son. I'm not a babysitter or... She stopped halfway through the sentence. I'm not an escort. You don't pay someone to spend time with someone else like this. I smiled at her defiance. I have a simple solution. Why don't you tell her you'll do whatever she wants for free? That way your reputation will remain untarnished. What reputation? I don't care what other people think. I have to live with myself. Woody chuckled quietly at his daughter's attempt at mature behavior. What she was saying made sense, but it was a long drag. How can I do my job and keep an eye on him at the same time? Dora can take over all your kitchen and dining room duties, and Jason will help you in the mornings with chores. That way, the second half of the day will remain free. What am I supposed to do with him then? Run naked through the woods and make mad, passionate love. Woody tried, but couldn't keep a straight face. It was a stupid way to tease his own daughter, but she'd given him a free pass herself, and he just couldn't resist. Damn it, Daddy, stop it! This is a serious matter, and you and John are turning it into some kind of joke. Caitlin lowered herself onto the bench between us. Okay, I'll take it, but only for 2 weeks. Woody put his arm around her. I don't know why, but I guess he was proud of her decision. We all got up and walked back to the cabin. Daddy, why can't I go to Princeton? Woody just hummed and slapped her on the butt. Later that evening, Amanda and I were having coffee in front of the fireplace. She seemed pleased with the way things were going and had decided to extend her stay at the cabin so she could be here at the same time as her son. She seemed a little upset, while I voiced disapproval of her idea. However, we came to a compromise. I promised to entertain her if she promised to leave Caitlin and Jason alone. She found the idea amusing and wanted to know exactly what I meant. I still hadn't been able to talk to Terry or Sarah about why she was at the cabin. That could wait until they were ready. After I got into bed, there was no way I could sleep. One thought kept going over and over in my head. Why Loretta hadn't tried to get the money that was in the bank. Why she had settled it so quickly. What was it that I didn't know? Amanda was already on the water when I went down to breakfast. Woody and I each had a blueberry pancake, but we didn't waste time on frivolous conversation. He had 2 outboard motors to repair, and I had bills to pay. I waited until late morning to call Seymour. I had a damn itch that needed scratching. John, I had the same concerns you did, but I didn't want to muddy the waters. I decided the most important thing was to get Loretta to sign the papers. However, I did involve one of my girls in the problem. Was it a problem or something else? Do you remember when Loretta's father died? Yes, it was about 6 years ago. It was very sad because she lost both her parents within 2 years. Loretta's father had a $100,000 life insurance policy. Did you know about it? She never mentioned it. Loretta put the insurance in a money market account at the Berkshire Credit Union under her maiden name. You're kidding, right? Why the hell would she do that? John will probably never know unless she decides to tell you. I figured she didn't want to try to get a piece of your joint assets because she didn't want to risk losing the insurance money. Ray Authority only came to town last year, so he had nothing to do with it. No, but that brings up another interesting point. Mr. Upright has a wife and 2 children in Colorado Springs. As far as we've been able to find out, Loretta didn't know about it. I couldn't help myself. I started laughing on the phone. I'm sorry, Seymour, but that's fucking ridiculous. She dropped everything for a man who was married and didn't even know it? It looks that way, and it's actually worse. How is that possible? She cashed out of the money market account yesterday and walked out with a cashier's check for $124,000. Looks like she's getting ready to leave town. All we can do is wait and see. At least you're not in trouble. I hung up the phone and sat back, chuckling softly to myself when Dora walked in. John, I just wanted to thank you for talking to Terry. I really appreciate it. She looked down at her feet as she spoke. Is everything okay? For the most part, yes. Not as good as it used to be, but a lot better than it could be. Dora, I think he really loves you. I'm glad things are back to normal. There was a brief pause, then she looked up. It's okay, John, but not everything is back to normal. Maybe in a little while, but not now. I can wait. What does that mean? Her eyes began to water slightly. It wasn't in my plans to cause her grief, so I decided to drop the subject. She started to turn and walk away, but stopped. He won't kiss me, John. My husband refuses to kiss me. We do everything else, but he can't bring himself to touch my lips with his. I feel like a whore. It hurts, but I guess I deserve it. As she walked out of the office, she sobbed softly. I didn't know what to say. Jason Freese arrived shortly after lunch. He was good-looking and well-built. It was hard to believe he was as bad at socializing as his mother claimed. Caitlin spotted him as soon as he entered the cabin, and a wide grin immediately appeared on her face. She hardly expected to see him like this. The next 2 weeks were going to be interesting. Amanda urged me several times to go fishing with her. I didn't mind bass or pike perch fishing, but I found pike fishing boring. I think this was partly because I couldn't tell the difference between a strike and a hook on a blade of grass. Luke, on the other hand, found the whole thing hilarious, although he did his best to restrain himself. She finally stopped making me go on dates with her if I agreed to go on nature walks in the afternoon. Terry and Woody were happy with the way things were working out. The 3 of us often got together to discuss business. Terry never talked about his relationship with Dora. Woody and I tactfully didn't bring it up. Of course, we all kept an eye on Caitlin and Jason. Things started out slowly, but picked up momentum by the second day. Eventually, Woody and I cornered her and forced her to tell us what was going on. I don't think the problem is as serious as Mrs. Freese is making it out to be. Why? He's just very shy, and mostly because of his stutter. He can't speak properly at all, and because of that, he avoids other people, especially girls, at all costs. I guess he was teased a lot when he was young. He seems comfortable with you. Not right away, Dad. Things are getting better now, but I think it will take more than 2 weeks. Woody started to laugh. So, you mean you want it to take longer than 2 weeks? I didn't say that. Don't make anything up. John, I think my daughter has made a friend. What do you think I should do about it? We should think about a chaperone. It was a weak attempt at teasing her, but she responded. Guys, enough already. He'll only be here for a few weeks, and then I'll never see him again. He's a good guy, and I don't understand what all the fuss is about. Does he have a girlfriend? Uncle John, it doesn't matter, but the answer is no. I don't think he's ever gone on a date. Because his father beat him up mentally and his mother overprotected him, he never had a chance. Have you kissed him yet? No, Dad, I haven't kissed him and I don't intend to. Why don't you guys leave it alone? We're doing fine. Stop trying to ruin it. With that short lecture, she skipped out of the room. Woody and I looked at each other and smiled. In the evening, Amanda and I had dinner together. She seemed pleased with the way Caitlin and Jason were getting along. I think she realized that part of his problem was that she was playing the role of mother hen. It was nice to see her getting ready to let him go off on his own. She also teased me for not keeping my end of our agreement. I had promised to keep her busy, and she felt I wasn't trying hard enough to fulfill that promise. Things were going smoothly at the lodge. The guests were happy, and we were actually making a profit. A small profit, but a profit. We contacted several ice hut operators in the area. They were willing to put as many huts on the lake as we could spare. We would only be able to operate them for 10 weeks, but it would fill the idle period. There were several bird enthusiast organizations in the area. This gave us another opportunity to fill a few slow months in the spring. We had enough of our own and adjacent public land to create several bird trails. We doubted that guests would wander into the woods during the fall hunting season, so we decided that fall was the best time to maintain and upkeep the entire facility. I spent every evening with Amanda. It was becoming natural and comfortable for both of us. It was almost 10 days after Jason's arrival when Woody and I experienced a bit of a shock. Caitlin met with Amanda to update her on the progress she was making with Jason. According to Amanda, things were going much better than she expected. They talked for about an hour, and then the Woody girl calmly asked Amanda if she could get her birth control pills. This was something Mrs. Freeze had not expected in any way. Without hesitation, she agreed. After Caitlin smilingly left, Amanda got to thinking. That's when Woody and I stepped in. Amanda didn't mind doing what Caitlin asked, but she didn't want to do it without Woody's approval. This is something a father shouldn't have to go through. Mothers were put on this earth to take care of situations like this. Amanda and I tried our best to assuage Woody's anxiety about the request. Reluctantly, he agreed that it was for the best. It turned out that Caitlin handled Jason better than either of us expected. The next morning, I got an unexpected call from Loretta. John, I need a little help. When I signed the divorce papers, I didn't ask for anything, well, in terms of money. Yeah, I know. But now I'm in a bind, and I was wondering if you could spare me a few $1,000s. It was obvious that something had happened in the last few days, something bad for my soon-to-be ex-wife. I don't understand. I thought you had a lot of money. What do you mean, John? I didn't take anything from you or from my accounts. No, I meant your father's insurance. There should have been enough there for a long time. There was a pause on the other end. John, did you know about the insurance? Of course I did. I'm not that stupid. What happened to all that money from the money market account? Oh my God, John, I'm so ashamed of myself. I did a stupid thing. What stupid thing, Loretta? Raymond and I opened a joint bank account using a cashier's check I got at the credit union. Let me guess. Raymond is out of town and the bank account is empty. Yes, and I don't know what to do. John, I need your help. Are you going to go and get the money back? What do you mean? Where? I have no idea where he is or where he might be going. I assume he's going to Colorado Springs to see his wife and kids. There was a long silence. Is he married? Yes, and he has 2 children. Why didn't you tell me? If you knew that, you should have told me. Damn it, John. I'm sorry, dear. I was under the impression that you wanted me out of your life. Now I realized she was crying. It was time to end the torture. Loretta, stop by Seymour's tomorrow. I'll call him and tell him to give you $5,000. That should be enough for a while, at least until you can get to Colorado and find a lawyer there to help you. John? Yes? Thanks. That was the last time I interacted with Loretta. Probably a lot of people would say I shouldn't have given her anything. That was my first thought. She screwed up so badly that I just couldn't help but feel sorry for her. Jason's visit to the cabin had been going on for over a month now. It was going to be time for him to leave soon. Caitlin spent all her time with him and avoided Woody and me. We started joking about it. It was as if she was setting him up for his debut in our group. We were all briefly introduced to each other, but none of us but Caitlin spent any time with him. At one end of the main hall was a small library or reading room. One afternoon, Woody and I noticed that Caitlin and Jason were there with Amanda Freese. It wasn't a casual gathering, it was like a formal meeting. Caitlin and Jason were dressed up compared to their usual outfits. Amanda noticed Woody and I watching them and smiled slightly at us. After about an hour, the kids got up and walked over to us. They both had big smiles on their faces. "Now it's your turn, Daddy. Mrs. Freese wants to talk to you and Uncle John." Woody and I walked in like two kids who had been sent to the principal's office. It turned out that Amanda Freese had more money than Woody and I had realized. We knew she was rich, but we never thought she was obscenely rich. Amanda's father had donated a lot of money to her longtime alum, Princeton, so much that Amanda could very well get whatever she wanted out of it. All that remained was to get Elwood F. Perry's agreement that his daughter could attend Princeton, starting in less than 2 weeks. For Woody, this was a sure thing. Later, Terry joined the two of us on the porch. It was too chilly for beer, but we drank it anyway. We were trying to figure out if Caitlin really liked Jason or if she was just pretending to get a free ride to college. We didn't spend much time on that. Terry still hasn't told me about Dora. Woody and I knew that topic would never be discussed. Later that evening, Amanda joined me in front of the fireplace with an old-fashioned popcorn popper. The microwave made better popcorn, but it was more fun to make it in the fireplace. I even liked the burnt, crunchy kernels. I've never thought wine was appropriate for popcorn, but tonight it seemed special. It was the first night in a long time that I didn't sleep alone. We thought we were being careful, but we forgot that Caitlin was the one who made the beds in the morning. Amanda's unmade bed didn't go unnoticed. At breakfast, Amanda and I endured taunts from Caitlin. Later that morning, Amanda moved her things into my room. Jason, who was usually very quiet and reserved, winked at me during lunch. I figured I had his approval. WeatherGuard Recovery Enterprises had agreed to repair the trashed house for $14,000 plus a 5% resale profit. They specialized in rebuilding hurricane and fire-damaged structures. The entire contract was handled over the internet. I never saw the old house again and ended up with over $60,000 in profit. Sarah called me to let me know that her mother was able to recover almost all of the money Raymond had taken from her. Loretta left Colorado for Los Angeles. She planned to stay with her cousin. Amanda traveled with Jason and Caitlin to help them get settled in at school. They had spent the last 2 weeks sharing a cabin, so Woody had no problem agreeing to them sharing an apartment while they attended school. He realized that if he tried to do anything else, he would only upset himself. Before returning, Amanda stopped by her home in Burlington to pack the clothes and personal items she would need at the cabin. Her decision to stay full-time was greeted with joy by all of us, especially Dora, who had missed female companionship to death. Amanda was going to take over advertising and correspondence, 2 tasks I'd done but never enjoyed. To Luke's horror, Amanda had stopped coming down the pike. It seemed her obsession was over. Late in the fall, business slowed down as we were one of the few places in the area not catering to hunters. This gave us time to catch up and get in shape. Money was not a problem. We threw a small Christmas party with a tree and presents. Amanda hung mistletoe, and Dora was happy when she got her first kiss from her husband. After that, things seemed to normalize between them. Poor Woody was the only one who spent the holidays alone, but it didn't seem to bother him too much. He never heard from Colleen again. Although my divorce was finalized, Amanda and I never discussed marriage. Things were fine the way they were, and neither of us wanted to mess things up. Jason and Caitlin didn't finish their freshman year at Princeton. After a fleeting marriage in Maryland, Jason transferred to the University of Vermont, and the 2 lovebirds moved into the family home in Burlington. Amanda was thrilled to have her first grandchild. Apparently, the birth control pills didn't help. Yes, it was juvenile, but it was a heck of a ride and tons of fun. I would do it again.